What is the purpose of studying the history of changes in measurement? Various measurement tools and technologies prove very useful in our daily lives. Using a ruler, thermometer, scale, and so on, many different quantities and sizes can be measured. The specific numerical values that come from the measurement allow us to explain this world. Simply by looking at numerical values, it is possible to quickly figure out how tall a person is, how hot a cup of coffee is, or how heavy a suitcase is. Measuring a distance and time lets us calculate speed and acceleration, as well as the initial velocity of a rocket launched to the moon and the pattern of population growth. Sometimes, people find an important meaning contained in numbers and spaces through measurement. Measurement plays an important role of bridging many fields in science, including mathematics. For example, measurement allows us to know who ran faster and who jumped higher in a sports tournament. It is not just a simple coincidence that measurement is used often in daily life. Because measurement has a close relationship with human life, societies and their members in the past can be understood by looking into the history of measurement. Chen Shihuang and Mao Zedong are two individuals who made China powerful. Chen Shihuang was the first to unify China, while Mao Zedong built modern socialist China. The main reason why they were able to unify the vast land and bring so many people together was that they unified measurement. Unification of measurement not only makes daily life convenient but make imposing and collecting taxes much easier. Mao Zedong reorganized the Chinese measurement system to make it easier to convert it to the Western measurement units. Once the change was made, China's economy developed rapidly. From just this case, we can see how important the unification of measurement is to building a nation. Various types of measurement units include Chinese units of measurement, metric system, yard-pound system, and more. Chinese units of measurement have been passed down from ancient China to the present. They use qi and count as units of length, jin and guan as units of weight, and shuang and dao as units of volume. Chinese units of measurement were introduced to Southeast Asian countries, which had been influenced by Chinese culture from old times. Each country modified them slightly and used them. Korea was no exception, given that it shared a border with China. Then, the Treaty of the Meter was signed, leading to global use of the metric system. The Korean Empire followed suit by setting up a government office called Pyongyang to modernize its measurement system. In 1905, King Gojong of Joseon Dynasty enacted and promulgated the rules for measurement as the first law of the Korean Empire, which made use of both Chinese units of measurement and the metric system. Under the law, 1 chuk, a unit of length, was defined as 0.303 meters, 1 guan, a unit of weight, was defined as 3.75 kilograms. For reference, the first law mentioned earlier does not mean that it was the first law enacted in the history of the Korean Empire, but the first one to be enacted in 1905. Because China had greatly influenced South Korea and in particular, it took a long time to convert the Chinese units of measurement to the metric system. Korea used both the Chinese units of measurement and the metric system from 1905. In 1961, a law was enacted adopting the metric system as an official unit of measurement. With the implementation of the law in 1964, the Chinese units of measurement and yard-pound system were prohibited. At that time, campaign slogans like "Measure it right away," "Weigh it right away," "Get more regulars," were visible in many places. Since 1983, Pyongyang, a unit for area measuring land or building space, also stopped being used. Units such as do, mao, and some were used for measuring rice, which was according to the Chinese units of measurement. One do was 10 hop, which was called a large do. Half of the do was a small do. 1 do of rice consists of about 61 ounces or 1.8 liter. Another that was used was sindo. To make the conversion to liter easier, 1 sindo was set at 2 liter. But why do we now use grains such as rice, beans, barley, and millet in weight instead of volume? Let's do an experiment. Prepare 2 bowls and fill one bowl with water and the other one with rice. If we were to tap each bowl, the height of water does not change, but the height of rice gradually decreases. In other words, because the amount of rice put in the same size of a container was not constant, units of weight are used to measure grains today. Anyhow, Chinese units of measurement originate from ancient China. Qi, one of the units that are often found in history. Understanding what Qi gives us clues on traditional scientific technology. Then, how did the unit of Qi come about? Qi was the human hand span, indicating the length between an extended thumb and middle finger. Qi can also be found in Chinese literature. Romance of the Three Kingdoms tells a story of wisdom and strategies that teaches life lessons. This book describes the height of its heroes in Qi. Liu Bei was 7 Qi 5 kun tall. His earlobe drooped down to his shoulder and he had red lips, and a face as wide as jade. Guan Yu was 9 Qi tall. He is depicted as a man of a red jujube-colored skin tone, the eyes of a phoenix, and the eyebrows like a silkworm. According to recent research findings, 1 Qi was about 9.3 inches or 23.6 centimeters in Han Dynasty. If we were to calculate Guan Yu's height based on this, he was 83.6 inches tall. Qi, having been invented in China, went to Korea and even Japan. In particular, Gogurylia created its own Qi that was appropriate for its situations. This is known as Gogurylia chalk. A Gogurylia chalk is an ancient ruler that was made in Gogurylia. It was 13.9 inches long, which was made by half a Qi to the original Qi ruler that was made in the ancient Chinese Han Dynasty. Every country in Northeast Asia used Gogurylia chalk. Given that Silla, Beach, Goktor Kangranit, and Japan all used Gogurylia chalk as a standard measurement, we can imagine the high status of respect Gogurylia achieved at the time. Gogurylia chalk was first brought to light in a Japanese record. A monk from Gogurylia is said to have introduced Gogurylia chalk to Japan. According to Ryonishuge, a Japanese book explaining the law, Gogurylia method was convenient when measuring land. Upon its introduction in Japan, Gogurylia chalk became a standard in civil engineering technology to build castles and measuring the area of fields and paddies. Even today, 1,300 years after the fall of Gogurylia, we can see the traces of Gogurylia chalk used in many places in Japan, such as buildings, castles, tombs, and more. In addition, some ancient Japanese law books that explain the method of measuring area have expressions like as is done in the ways of Goguryeo and follow the measurement of Goguryeo. There also are many interesting stories related to chalk. Before Li Songjia, King Tizhou of Chosun dynasty, established the country, he dreamt of a mountain god. It is said that the god told him, "You are wise and have mastery in martial arts, you are virtuous and have discernment. It has been long since your people have wanted you. So take this ruler and govern them," and gave him a ruler made of gold. This story was not just a simple tale handed down from Chosun dynasty, but it used as the main theme in various art genres. Chalk was a standard to measure length. Only the king could own the standard at that time. The dream that Li Songjia received the golden ruler indirectly indicates the validity of his sovereignty. Chalk has been an important unit from the ancient times to the present, and it became the starting point of the civilization on the Korean peninsula. Let's suppose there were 50 inventions made all over the world in the Middle Ages. To look at the number of inventions from each country, Japan had none, China, a center of culture at that time, had about 5, and South Korea had around 28. Based on these inventions, Chosun dynasty achieved a rich culture in various fields including medicine and agriculture. King Sejong created Hwangjuangchuk and unified the country's measurement. This meant a new turning point of science in Chosun. What is notable in this period was that it marked a standard to observe nature. Through understanding the history of measurement, it is also possible to know the flow of world history. Although the metric system has become the world standard today, powerful countries in the past created and used their own units of measurement. China adhered to Chinese units of measurement and the UK kept at its yard-pound system. This was possible because they had a pride in their nation and national competitiveness. No matter how organized and convenient was the measurement system created and introduced by a small country, it would have been extremely difficult for such systems to be actually used due to the influence of more powerful countries. Why did the Chinese units of measurement and yard-pound system get invented? In 221 BCE, the spring and autumn period of ancient China ended and the lands were unified as the Qin dynasty. Qin dynasty established a new national system based on Feijia ideas. Feijia theory states that a strong country and strengthened royal authority requires a strict rule of law. As the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang needed to create various policies in order to unify massive landmass of many different cultures and peoples. First of all, to rule over the large territory, he divided the country into counties and prefectures. Then, he refined the roads connecting the regions to allow a quick movement of troops. Qin Shi Huang also unified currency and measurement to make trade easier. Unification of written language followed, opening the way for active exchange between people of different regions. For Qin Shi Huang, the Huns that had gathered force in the northwest plains were of great concern. The border was always in a state of disorder as groups of men on horseback rushed in like the wind and disappeared in a flash. Qin Shi Huang sent Meng Tian, his trusted general, with 300,000 soldiers to the north. They defeated the Huns and reclaimed the land that the Huns had taken. To prevent further invasions into the country, he started to construct a gigantic wall. Some walls were newly constructed, and some walls that were already there were repaired and connected to each other. A wall that is thousands of kilometers long that would be later known as the Great Wall of China was completed. This was how China as a unified state took shape. In fact, the word China is thought to have come from the Qin dynasty. One of the interesting policies that Chen Shihong established is that he unified the width of wheels. At that time, the wheels of wagons made in different sizes to prevent foreign war wagons from entering the country. Roads had deep grooves like a rail so that wagon wheels would run on them. Enemy wagons that had different distances between the wheels would have a harder time running in the roads, creating an advantage during wars. However, Chen Shihong thought that different wheel sizes would interfere with the flow of traffic given that China had then been unified. So he unified the width of the wheels. Although Qin dynasty unified measurement, people would not have accepted it immediately. Just as we find it hard to fix old habits, people generally find it difficult to abandon their customs. A system of units is a group of the basic units representing physical quantity, such as length, time, mass, and current, and derived units, a combination of basic units. That is, a system of units is the rule that shows units and the relationship among them. As mentioned earlier, the unit of length is qi, and the unit of weight was guan in Chinese units of measurement. Qi, the basic unit of length, is about 1 foot. Other units of length include kun, 1/10 of a qi, fen, 1/10 of a kun, and li, 1/10 of a fen. To measure long distances, li, another unit of length, corresponding to about 430 yards, was used. Guan, a unit of weight, can be converted to approximately 3.75 kilograms in the metric system and 8.3 pounds in the yard-pound system. 1/100th of a guan is liang, 1/100th of a liang is jin, and 1/100th of a jin is fen. A unit called jin has special uses. When measuring fruits or vegetables, 1/10 of a guan is a jin, about 13.2 ounces. When measuring meat or medicinal herbs, 21 ounces is a jin. Since qi and guan has a different standard depending on time and region, we need to take caution when we are converting units. In Chinese units of measurement, guan is a unit of weight that had been used since the Tang dynasty of ancient China. It was a unit based on the weight of a bundle of 1,000 coins that were used at that time. Tang dynasty stopped the use of wuzhu, a type of coin used before its time, and replaced it with kei and tongbao. According to the law at that time, a guan was about 9.2 pounds. However, the actual weight of 1,000 kei and tongbao was about 8.2 pounds, which was used to refer to as 1 guan in everyday life. Korea also referred to the weight of 1,000 coins as 1 kwon, Korean pronunciation of guan, during the reign of King Sejong during the Joseon dynasty. However, it was rarely used in daily life. Then, from the influence of Japan, kwon was again used as a unit of weight. At that time the reference weight of guan was mom, 1,000 mom equaled with 1 kwon. In Korea, mom was called un, most likely in an attempt to use in place of the Chinese unit jin. Anyhow, because 1 kwan is around 8.267 pounds, 1 mom is around 0.123 ounces. Korea currently uses the international standard of the metric system, but the Chinese unit of measurement continues to be used when discussing the weight of precious metals, medicinal herbs, and agricultural products. In the 16th century, Elizabeth I of England laid a strong foundation for England to develop into the British Empire. By establishing a religious order centered on the Anglican Church and defeating the Spanish Armada, England welcomed its golden age under the absolute rule of the monarch. Queen Elizabeth solved many pressing issues, including religious and economic problems. In the 16th century, inflation in England increased sharply due to the sudden increase in the amount of money in circulation. England was able to restore its economic stability by unifying its currency and producing and distributing the new currency. Queen Elizabeth was able to rule England in much more stable manner than other rival countries by unifying the currency and organizing a measurement system. The first prototype for England's yard appears in Edward I's composition of yards and perches as the iron ulna of our Lord the King. Edward I standardized the previously arbitrary unit of length. The prototype for yard had been made out of iron, but it unfortunately no longer exists today. The oldest prototype that still exists today was made out of brass under Henry VII. Compared to the length of the yard we use today, it differs only by 0.037 inches. The foundation for England's yard-pound system was established during Elizabeth I era. Also, the prototype for troy pounds and avoirdupois pounds that was determined to be the standard for weight at the time was also made out of brass. This prototype, which was used until the early 19th century, played an important role in unifying measurement in England. Yard and pound are unique units of measurement in England. It has been used mainly in Anglo-Saxon countries, including the US, and regions previous colonies of England. Yard was used for length, pound for mass, and second for time, and Fahrenheit was used to measure temperature in industrial sectors. Gallon is used to measure volume, but the amount it refers to varies between England and the US. The yard-pound system originated from the ancient Orient regions, and it went through much change as it passed through the Greek and Roman periods. It later combined with various unit systems and became settled in England. As such, the units in the yard-pound system did not have a unified standard at first. It was only under Queen Elizabeth I of England that it was standardized. Since the late 17th century, the Royal Society did most of the work on standardizing measurement in England. The international yard and pound we use today were based on an agreement in 1958 between the US and the British Commonwealth nations, with a yard of 0.9144 meters and a pound of 0.453592437 kilograms. However, because the difference between the size of a gallon was so wide, an agreement could not be reached. Today, a gallon is defined as the volume of 10 pounds of water at 62 degrees Fahrenheit in England and 231 cubic inches in the US. In liters, this is 4.546 liter for the UK gallon and 3.785 liter for the US gallon. The units of length in the yard-pound system includes foot, which is 1/3 of a yard, inch, which is 1/12 of a foot, and mile is used for long distances, which is 1,760 yards. In case of weights, 1/16 of a pound is an ounce, and a ton is 2,240 pounds in England and 2,000 pounds in the US. Converting this to the metric system, a ton is 1,016 kilograms in England and 907 kilograms in the US. However, the metric system refers to 1,000 kilograms as a ton, so we must be careful to distinguish the difference. Because the units in the yard-pound system refer to different sizes depending on the region, such as the US and the UK, and era, we must be careful when converting the units. It is especially important to remember that there are many instances where units have the same name but mean different sizes in the US and in the UK. As we can see from the Chinese units of measurement and yard-pound system, a unified measurement system for letters, currency, and measurement is essential for a country to prosper. Measurement does not just simply act as a tool for measuring but plays an important role in bridging different individuals and countries. Today, the metric system has become settled as the international standard of measurement. This has allowed for countries around the world to interact actively as if it is a single community in economic, social, and scientific realms. What is the benefit of understanding the physical quantity of an object of measurement? We can see the competitive power of a country by looking at its measurement system. For example, the yard-pound system is used when measuring distance in golf instead of the metric system. Although it is not proven, golf is thought to have originated from a folk game shepherds in a region of Scotland played by hitting stones with a wooden stick curved at the end. In the 15th century, golf spread to the aristocracy to the point where even kings played it. After the 16th century, golf became the sports anyone could play regardless of class, spreading even to England. This is why golf was called the royal and ancient game. But why do we still use the yard-pound system when measuring distance in golf, and not the metric system? There are two reasons for this. First, it is because the yard-pound system was used to measure distance in golf since it first came about. Changing the units to the metric system may cause confusion to those who play it. Second, it is because of the pride of being the country of origin for golf. The yard-pound system had to be maintained to keep the tradition of golf, a game the king enjoyed. In other words, it is because of the influence of the UK, the birthplace of golf. The US also uses the yard-pound system, but it is slightly different from that in the UK. The UK defines a pound based on the prototype of a pound, while the US defines a pound based on the prototype of a kilogram, causing a slight difference. On July 1, 1959, the US and UK made an agreement to unify the pound. However, disagreements have not been resolved on what amounts to a gallon, a measurement for volume. As mentioned earlier, the UK gallon has a bigger volume than the US gallon. This difference occurred because the UK used the ale gallon while the US used the wine gallon. The two countries could not unify the gallon unit because of their pride. If one of the two countries were to follow the other's units, they could be seen as having less competitive power, which is why they cannot make an agreement. Many countries using the yard-pound system continue to discuss how they may unify the units. What does the term horsepower mean when automobile advertisements say things like, embedded with an engine with 180 horsepower? the power of one horse is referred to as 1 horsepower. This term originates from the UK. Horsepower was first used to measure the performance of a steam engine James Watt designed by using horses, the main means of travel and transportation at the time. It was decided that 1 horsepower is equivalent to the strength of a 1765-born British horse. However, a horsepower differed slightly in what it refers to depending on whether a country uses the metric or yard-pound system. So, the international system of units uses watt. In the UK, where the yard-pound system is used, 1 horsepower is around 745.7 watt, while in France and other countries that use the metric system, 1 horsepower is 735.5 watt. Although it is easier to compare size using watt, most of the automobile industry continues to use horsepower. Of course, just because a car has 280 horsepower, this does not mean that we could have a tug-of-war between a car on one end and 280 horses tied to the other end. The value of a horsepower only refers to the power that comes from the car's engine. However, when the car moves, the engine's motive power does not get fully transferred to the wheels. Some people differentiate the powers by calling the power the engine makes and turns the wheel axis engine horsepower and the power that gets delivered to the wheel horsepower. A car's engine power may be marked as maximum power output 280 PS at 6,800 RPM. This means that the engine has 280 horsepower when the number of revolution is 6,500 RPM. Here, RPM refers to number of revolutions per minute. That is, the car's maximum power occurs when the engine is revolving 6,500 times per minute. Since ancient times, people's daily lives consist of constantly taking measurements. In the Asian units of measurement, dan was used as a unit to measure rice. However, the use of dan decreased greatly since the metric system appeared. It is pronounced som in Korean and dan in Chinese. Then what was the standard that was used to determine 1 dan? One view states that it refers to the amount of rice that can be grown in a medaji of rice paddy in a year. Others say that it is the amount of rice consumed by one person per year. But then why did the unit dan disappear? This is because the producer and consumers of rice no longer saw value in measuring rice with dan. With the advent of the Green Revolution in the 1970s in Korea, the amount of rice planted in one medaji increased to 2 to 3-fold of 1 dan, while the amount of rice consumed by a person in a year decreased to less than half a dan by the 2000s. The unit durium is used to count fish and wild greens in Korea. In the past, fish was sold with 10 fish tied to a string. 20 fish and 2 strings was called 1 durium. In the case of wild greens, 10 fistfuls were called 1 dirham. Although these units of measurement are familiar to Koreans, those in other cultures find it confusing. It is the same for the metric and yard-pound system. Sometimes we are unsure whether to use the metric system or the yard-pound system, or we may even get stuck in unfortunate situations from mixing up the two measurement systems. There are those that argue that the vendors should have the freedom to choose between the metric system and the yard-pound system for their economic activities. They are called the metric martyrs. For example, Steve Thoburn was selling a pound of bananas for 34 pennies but was sued for not using the metric system. This case soon became a political issue led by the UK Independent Party. Thoburn, who took over his father's business, saw using the yard-pound system as a part of tradition. In fact, the people in the market were more familiar with the pound unit. Thoburn continued a lonely legal fight, but the court ruled in favor of the metric system. Unfortunately, he died of a heart attack at his home in 2004, and those that opposed the metric system called him a martyr and mourned for him. A few years later, in 2007, the EU decided not to force its members to abandon the yard-pound system. Merchants could mark their fruits and vegetables in pounds or ounces, bars could sell alcohol in pints, and road signs could be marked in miles. Although there is no problem in using the yard-pound system within the US or UK, it is another story in fields with active global collaboration, such as science, technology, engineering, and math. Because most research materials and books today use units from the metric system, those using the yard-pound system have to accept their disadvantage in this area. The disadvantage American students get due to the yard-pound system is called the C gap. Because of the difference of the unit system, students in America that are interested in math or science has more difficulty in learning about these fields relative to children from other countries. This is especially because it is not easy to convert larger yard-pound units to smaller ones. For example, to calculate how many inches are in 14 yards, you first have to multiply 14 by 3 to convert it into feet, and multiply it again by 12 to get the inches. However, the metric system has the advantage in that the unit can be changed simply by moving the decimal point. For example, to change 14 meters to millimeters, we just need to multiply it by 1,000. As we can see from the above, units of measurements act as pillars in our lives. They are everywhere around us. The activity humans do most from when they wake in the morning until they go to sleep at night is measuring something. The objects we measure have changed with time, but the essential measuring aspect remains the same. Every day, people check how much battery is left on their phones, the speed of the car they are driving, and time and distance left to get to the destination. We also check in real time how much it will snow or rain, the concentration of fine dust, and stock prices. It certainly seems safe to say that people's daily lives are a continuum of unconscious measurements. In order to understand all the physical quantities of an object that is to be measured, there needs to be a specific standard. Units of measurement must be established. Society and its members act systematically on top of the foundations of units of measurement. It is the measurement that allows people today to attribute an appropriate value to goods when trading and maintain a beautiful order.